Welcome to the Digital Edge with Sharon Nelson and Jim Calloway. Your hosts, both legal technologists, authors, and lecturers, invite industry professionals to discuss a new topic related to lawyers and technology. You're listening to Legal Talk Network.
Welcome to the 113th edition of the Digital Edge, Lawyers and Technology. We're glad to have you with us. I'm Sharon Nelson, president of Sensei Enterprises, an information technology, cybersecurity, and digital forensics firm in Fairfax, Virginia.
And I'm Jim Calloway, director of the Oklahoma Bar Association's Management Assistance Program. Today, our topic is law really a buyer's market? And if so, now what?
Before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Thanks to our sponsor, Clio. Clio's cloud-based practice management software makes it easy to manage your law firm from intake to invoice. Try it for free at Clio.com. That's CLIO.com. We'd like to also thank Answer One, a leading virtual receptionist and answering service provider for lawyers. You can find out more by giving them a call at 800-ANSWER1 or online at www.answer1.com. That's www.answer1.com.
Thanks to our sponsor, Scorpion, which delivers award-winning law firm website design and online marketing programs to get you more cases. Scorpion has helped thousands of law firms just like yours attract new cases and grow their practices. For more information, visit scorpionlegal.com/podcast. Thanks also to ServeNow, a nationwide network of trusted pre-screened process servers. Work with the most professional process servers who have experience with high-volume serves, embrace technology, and understand the litigation process. Visit servenow.com to learn more. We are very pleased to have as our guest Jordan Furlong. Jordan is a speaker, author, and legal market analyst who forecasts the impact of changing market conditions on lawyers and law firms. He has given presentations to audiences in the U.S., Canada, Europe, and Australia over the past several years, including to law firms, state bars, courts, and many legal associations. Jordan is a fellow of the College of Law Practice Management and a member of the advisory board of the American Bar Association Center for Innovation. He is the author, most recently, of the book, Law is a Buyer's Market, Building a Client-First Law Firm. And he writes regularly about the changing legal market on his website, law21.ca. And I'll also note he's an all-around great guy. So thanks for joining us today, Jordan.
Thank you very much, Jim, and Sharon, for having me. It's a huge pleasure to be with you today.
Well, we're delighted to have you. And so I need to ask you first, what does it mean when you say law is a buyer's market? What are you telling us?
Yeah, which is a pretty good question. Sharon, the short answer is that it means that the balance of power between lawyers and clients in the legal market has shifted, and it has shifted in favor of clients. And it couldn't shift any further towards lawyers, right? Because we have always been the ones who were in control of the market, right? We've had exclusive access. No one else has ever been allowed to offer legal services. We have all the information and the expertise, and we know how the system works and all these things. And our clients have traditionally known almost nothing about the legal system. They don't know anything about the legal solutions available to them. A lot of times they don't even have a very clear grasp of the problems they've got. And I think most importantly, they've never had any option except you got to go to a lawyer for whatever you need and, accept whatever terms of the relationship that the lawyer or the law firm feels like imposing on them. And that's now changing. There is competition in the market now, people who aren't lawyers, in entities and companies that aren't law firms, and they're offering legal services at different price points and quality points than has been the case in the past, and in more convenient, affordable ways. And when I say quality points, I mean, brief sidebar, to be clear, I don't necessarily mean lower quality than what lawyers offer, although sometimes, it is lower quality, and that can be fine, right? I mean, I think this is an important point we often overlook. You can offer services at a level below a lawyer's quality and yet still be above a baseline level of competence, right? I think that that's a fairly large gap, and that's a gap in the market that's going to get filled. But at the same time, I'm also talking about a difference in quality, which is higher level. And these are the technology-driven services for, routine, repeatable kind of drudge work, and that machines are inherently better at. And humans tend to be, more hit and miss and error prone. So it's a range of options, range of price points, different sectors, different levels of quality, and all these options are now available. And there's other aspects as well, which, we don't have time to go into, regulation, changes in the regulatory system and other types of technology and so forth. But the basic idea behind law as a buyer's market is that clients have choices now, and they have access to more information and knowledge than they've had before, and they're in ascendance. The gap is closing between lawyers and clients. Clients are feeling more powerful. They're just sensing a change in the wind, and they're acting on it. That's basically what it means.
Jordan, you mentioned a bunch of market forces that are very important, but what's the big picture? How did this all happen? We were in control, and is it somehow the lawyer's fault that this has all changed?
Gosh, no. Well, not exactly. It's not the fault of individual lawyers and law firms, right? This is the point I try to make when I give presentations. I said, look, you shouldn't feel that this is something that everybody here somehow missed, or it's a failure on our part individually, because as lawyers we're particularly sensitive to that. But the point I make is no, these things are for the most part happening as a result of forces way beyond our control, right? These are like macroeconomic and social forces at work here, and we are not the only profession to whom this has happened, right? I like to say, ask the journalism profession or what's left of it about the impact that, globalization and the internet and the changing nature of work, it's all of a piece across multiple industries. So it's raining everywhere, right? Not just on our particular patch of lawn. But at the same time, as speaking more broadly as a profession, I actually do think we bear some responsibility here. And this is primarily because of the brutal state of access to justice, right? Lawyers serve only about 15-20% of the total population of legal problems. There are several studies across multiple jurisdictions that have established that. And I call that the tip of the iceberg, right? If, it's that 15% just above water. And if you, as a client or as a buyer, if you have the money and the inclination to hire a lawyer, then great. You're above water, you're free and clear and dry and in the sunshine, and that's great. And if you don't, well, then you're down there under the water, right? And you're holding your breath. And that's what I call the latent legal market. The people and the businesses who are underwater, they have legal and law-related problems, but they either can't find a lawyer to help them because they don't have any money, or the problem is relatively minor from the lawyer's point of view, that it's not worth the lawyer's time and effort to handle it. But these are still real people with real problems, and we all know them, right? We know them in our families and amongst our friends, and they deserve a solution too. And all these new competitors that I just mentioned, all these new players in the market, they are more than happy to give those solutions to these people, to fill that gap I talked about, between baseline competent and lawyer. We used to call it the Cadillac solution. I guess it's, the Lexus solution or something, But that's where these new players are. And this is the key point I try to make to lawyers too. Once these new players get the hang of these lower value matters, once they've really established a beachhead in the market, they are not going to stay there. They are going to move up, they're going to move in, and they're going to come for the higher value matters that lawyers have traditionally considered their exclusive inventory. And I think that's the trend we're seeing right now.
So what do you tell those in smaller law firms about how to deal with a buyer's market?
Well, Sharon, it's interesting because there's two ways of looking at it. In one sense, smaller firms have specific kinds of challenges that the bigger firms don't have, right? Generally speaking, they don't have the depth of resources and money available. More and more of the lawyers in the firm are caught up in day-to-day work, and it's harder to find people who are able to not just do the management and the leadership and everything else, but the long-term strategic planning that's required to keep an eye on this sort of a thing. So in that respect at least, yeah, it's a bigger challenge. You could also flip the lens, though, and say that an advantage that small firms, and especially I think solos or very small firms have, is that degree of flexibility. If you've anybody who's ever tried to get anything new done in a large law firm or anything of significance in any kind of shift in direction knows just how hard it is. And so in that respect, it's probably a little bit easier. But I think, and for me, this is a more important point. I think regardless of what size of firm you have, whether you're like a solo or a national firm, I think the real problem is the traditional business model, the traditional law firm structure. And the reason is that structure evolved and developed in a very different kind of market than this one, right? In the traditional law firm, and we all know this because we all, kind of grew up in these firms and practice in these firms, you get work done by giving it to a lawyer, and the lawyer goes through it, sequentially, plodding along, one thing after another, and you start everything from scratch or from a basic precedent, and if you have to reinvent wheels, that's totally fine. And you get it done at whatever pace is reasonable, and then you count up all the hours it took, and you bill the client for those number of hours. And that's crazy. I keep trying to make this point to law firms. That's a 19th century system, never mind a 20th century one. And I think most lawyers, if they put themselves in the position of their clients or the buyer's point of view, we wouldn't put up with that. Right? We don't like it when we get it from, like auto mechanics or other service providers. So I don't know why we think our clients would want it from us. And they don't want it, but they've never had any other choice before. So, now they do. So I guess my advice to small firms in particular, because, again, if you want to make those massive investments in technology and artificial intelligence, fine, Godspeed. I don't think it's particularly necessary. And if you're a smaller firm, that's not really an option. But you don't need to be a big firm to rethink how you run your business and how you sell your services. And the one thing I like to say to lawyers is we have to lose this idea completely that we are selling our time or we are selling our expertise, because we're really not, right? We're selling outcomes. We're selling results, because that's what clients are actually coming to us to get, right? They don't want our hours or our best efforts. They want a specific outcome, something what accomplished or avoided or solved. So what I say to lawyers, and I think this especially applies in smaller practices, you need to think like you're running a legal solutions firm, right? I know solutions is a totally overused term. We hear it in technology all the time, but I think it has real resonance because that's what, again, people are coming to us for. Generally speaking, they have problems and they need solutions. And if you're a legal solutions firm, you don't sell hours or efforts. You sell outcomes. And if we start pricing our work that way, if we start figuring out the value of the results we are providing to our clients, and we make that our inventory, then I think we're in a whole new ballgame, and we're in a far better position to compete in the market that's coming. If we start pricing our work on the basis of solutions, if we start compensating people for solutions rather than hours, that would be nice. Just take time spent out of the deal altogether. I think that would be an excellent way to start.
You talk about substitutes for lawyers and law firms in your book. What exactly do you mean by that, and could you give us some examples?
Sure. A substitute, in like pure economic terms, a substitute is any product or service that so closely resembles a similar product or service in terms of its costs and its experience and its outcomes that it's immaterial whether you use one or the other. In my book, I use a little, flippantly, but I use the example of McDonald's and Burger King, right? If you consider them to be completely interchangeable, and, I certainly do, but if you consider them to be basically the same thing, then you'll go to McDonald's if Burger King raises its prices, or if Burger King is too far away to drive to quickly and conveniently. Now, there are no perfect substitutes for lawyers in the market. I doubt there ever will be. I don't know why anybody would want to develop one, frankly. But there are already partial substitutes. And by this I mean a product or a service or a person who can provide some aspect of what lawyers do to a level or a degree that is, in practical terms, indistinguishable from how a lawyer does it, such that if the lawyers are more expensive, and generally speaking the lawyers always can be more expensive, then you will use the substitute for that particular function. And the best examples here are technology-based. Whether it's like electronic discovery or technology-assisted review, due diligence software, which is driven by, various artificial intelligence algorithms, expert applications that are out now that can answer really basic legal questions. These are substitutes that, in these specific niche areas, they do basically as good a job as lawyers do, and at a lower cost. And by cost, I don't just mean in terms of money, which, obviously is a big issue, but in terms of what you call friction, right? The ease of use and the accessibility and the affordability. If it's, 11 p.m. on Saturday night and you need access to some kind of a legal solutions engine, you will not find a law firm in the world that's going to help you out, but you can find these substitutes, and they will. So, the way I describe it, it's like little armies, of these little substitutes, little mechanical mice is the picture I draw. And they're scurrying into the market, and they're carting off little bits of lawyers' inventory, piece by piece, an hour here and an hour there, and carting them off. And I think that for a lot of lawyers, that's kind of the reality of where we are right now, or where we're heading very rapidly.
Well, on that happy note, before we move on to our next segment, let's take a quick commercial break.
Is your firm experiencing missed calls, empty voicemail boxes, and potential clients you'll never hear from again? Enter Answer One Virtual Receptionists. They're more than just an answering service. Answer One is available 24/7. They can even schedule appointments, respond to emails, integrate with Clio, and much more. Answer One helps make sure your clients have the experience they deserve. Give them a call at 1-800-ANSWER1 or visit them at answer1.com/podcast for a special offer.
Looking for a process server you can trust? ServeNow.com is a nationwide network of local pre-screened process servers. ServeNow works with the most professional process servers in the country. Connect your firm with process servers who embrace technology, have experience with high-volume serves, and understand the litigation process and the rules of properly effectuating service. Find a pre-screened process server today. Visit ServeNow.com.
Welcome back to the Digital Edge on the Legal Talk Network. Today our subject is law really a buyer's market? And if so, now what? And our guest is Jordan Furlong, who we've introduced to you previously. Jordan, what should the law firms do to respond and to adapt to all the turmoil that we have seen shifting this over to a buyer's market? What are their options?
Yeah, Sharon, I think that's the key question. And the response that I tend to give to lawyers is, look, there's three ways you can deal with this. There are these new ways of delivering legal services. You can adopt these legal services in some way into your own practice. You can augment them to some degree, add your own particular unique bells and whistles. Or you can say, you know what, I can't compete in this practice area anymore. I need to go do something else, higher value, something the machines can't imitate. And I think fundamentally those are the three principal ways to respond to a multiplayer market. Recognize that the basic work, the routine, everyday legal stuff, forms and contracts, and which has kept a lot of law firms going, right? That's going away. Someone else is going to do that work. Now, that might be you, the lawyer, right? If you kind of radically reshape your practice and be a very commoditized, process-driven, law factory is what Ron Friedman calls it, and I think accurately, and that's great. Nothing wrong with that. But I think that's the only way that work's going to get done. So if it's not going to be economically feasible to do it any other way. So if you don't want to adopt these new methods now coming into the market, you'll need to find something else to offer to the market that is going to be more resistant to automation or to substitution.
In your book, you talk about choosing your markets and your clients. How do you square that with being in a buyer's market? And don't we have to take whatever we can find, or as lawyers around here say, whatever walks in the front door?
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean. I know it's tempting. And you're right. There's a lot of lawyers who, for years have been practicing door law. If it comes in the door, it's a client. If it's a sector where someone wants to pay me, it's a market. That's great. And it's even, more, we feel more compelled in that direction in tough times. But, I think the problem is because the market is so much more competitive now, I think lawyers need to be choosier. I think we need to be smarter and more selective and say to ourselves, where are the markets where we can really be dominant? What are the kind of clients that we're going to serve better than anybody else? I talk about this at more length in the book. To sum up, what I kind of say there is that there's markets that are going to have advantages for you. They're going to be complex, right? They're not going to be easily automatable or substitutable or what have you. They're sustainable, right? I think you want to take a long-term view of a market and say, is this market going to be around in 5 or 10 years' time, right? And if your market is, people who die before they give away all their stuff, then yes, you're a wills lawyer, you're probably fine, right? But if you are serving the oil and gas industry, then maybe you need to take a closer look at alternative fuels and what that's going to do to your client base. And so these are the kind of aspects you need to think about. Take a look and say, where do we fit in best, right? We have this long-standing idea in law firms that we're all things to all people. We're, quote-unquote, full-service law firms. But I really don't think that's going to be a viable option going forward. What can you do as a lawyer or as a firm better than almost any other firm or lawyer in your area? Where do you fit almost perfectly? Those are the places you want to look for. Those are the places you want to devote yourselves to serving.
Well, you outline 3 separate types of law firm strategies in your book, and you name them client, competitive, and cultural. Can you briefly explain these?
Oh, well, I can explain these. I don't know if I can do briefly. I'll try my best. Basically, what I say in the book is that I think a law firm needs to have a strategy in 3 dimensions, and they're all related to each other. And one of those is around client service, which I don't mean in the cliched sense, client service is so important to us. I mean in very actionable ways. Very deep intel about the client, enforceable client service protocols that say to everybody in the firm, every time a client gets served, he or she can expect to be served according to these standards, really looking at the user experience of your firm. And then something, and it kind of blows me away that I know very few firms that actually do this, actually monitor and track and act on the results they actually deliver to the clients, right? The outcome of the retainer, which I say to them, it's kind of the entire point of the firm's existence is to do this. Why are we not tracking this with nearly the amount of attention and focus we use and we give to billable hours? And then talk about a competitive strategy, and a lot of that is differentiation, right? How do you really stand out from everybody else who's trying to serve your markets and your clients? But I think this is important. How do you stand out in ways that turn on the client's purchasing decisions? The jokey way I put it in the book is that you could differentiate yourself by saying, we're going to be the nicest law firm in the world, right? We're going to be the sweetest people. Oh my gosh, people are going to love coming to us, and we're going to be a delight to deal with. Which is to say, it's not a terribly high bar to pass. But but again, that's fine, and people may like that. But are they going to switch their work from another firm to my firm because I'm really nice? Probably not. So why do clients actually purchase the services they do from the suppliers they do? I think law firms need to have a very accurate answer to that question, and the only way to know it is to actually ask the clients that you're serving. And the third dimension is around culture, which I think is in many ways criminally underrated in law firms. The culture, what kind of behaviors are tolerated and what kind of behaviors are enforced around here, right? And if you're listening to this, in a law firm, and you can sit back and think, what falls into those 2 categories? What do we put up with around here, and what do we expect from people around here? And I think the answers, and I suspect everybody listening to this can make a very short list in a very quick period of time. That's the culture of your firm, right? And I go on at some length in the book about what I call the pillars of a good culture, which, just to name them, are concern for the client, respect for your colleagues, service to the community, and care for oneself. I think this last one is really important. Talk about underrated. We don't make it as part of our culture in law firms that lawyers take care of themselves mentally and physically and emotionally. We value this idea. We make a fetishization out of, how hard you work and how many hours you put in, and we just wreck people. We wreck them physically and emotionally, and I think that's got to stop as well. So these are the elements, to my mind, of a really strong culture. You put these 3 strategies together, you come up with various tactics to advance them, and I think that is a far more robust, I think it's a far better balanced kind of culture and kind of strategy that law firms want to have right now.
Before we move on to our next segment, let's take a quick commercial break.
Imagine what you could do with an extra 8 hours per week. That's how much time legal professionals save with Clio, the world's leading practice management software. With intuitive time tracking, billing, and matter management, Clio streamlines everything you do to run your practice from intake to invoice. Try Clio for free and get a 10% discount for your first 6 months when you sign up with the code TDE10. Of course, you can find Clio at Clio.com. That's CLIO.com. Not getting enough cases from the internet? The kind of cases you want? Scorpion can help. Over the last 15 years, Scorpion has helped thousands of law firms just like yours attract new cases and grow their practices. During this time, Scorpion has won over 100 awards for its law firm website design and online marketing success. Join the thousands of law firms which partner with Scorpion and start getting more cases today. For more information, visit scorpionlegal.com/podcast. Welcome back to the Digital Edge on the Legal Talk Network. Today our subject is law really a buyer's market? And if so, now what? And our guest is Jordan Furlong, who has been giving us some wonderful advice here. Jordan, you go so far as to say that law firms in the future won't have partners or associates. Now, what the heck does that mean? What's that all about?
Yeah, that one's kind of a Hail Mary pass in fairness. That's more of my sort of long shot. But in a way, it's kind of where we're tracking right now in law firms. Law firms really today make partners primarily because they need the investment of capital to get the firm to work, right? Otherwise, firms would be entirely associates. They'd be entirely employees. And I think that, without going into this in any detail at all, I think that inevitably law firms are going to be taking equity from sources other than lawyers within the next 10 years or so, even in the United States. But even if not, the question you have to ask yourself is, who do we really consider essential around here? Who is indispensable to our firm? And the fact of the matter is that if you took your entire population of partners and applied that question to them, who is utterly indispensable, I think most of the partners wouldn't fall into that category. And I think we need a better term. We need a better term for the indispensable, essential people we cannot afford to lose, the people we would move heaven and earth to bring into our firm if they weren't here, than partner. I don't know if that's director or if it's like chief shareholder or something like that. I don't know. But we need to rethink our whole notion of how equity is created, how power and influence are shared and exercised within law firms. And as for associates, I think that one's probably closer because we're already seeing, I think, the slow death of the associate in law firms. Hiring in firms is down. Of new lawyers, we're definitely seeing narrowing bands of associate classes and cohorts every year, primarily because the leverage model that once sustained the pyramid model of law firms, because of all this new technology, because of new outsourcing and offshoring and automation possibilities, we don't need as many people to do this work anymore. And so the leverage model isn't going to make as much sense. So what I basically say to firms, and it's almost a bit of a thought experiment, but picture a future where you don't have partners or associates, but you do still have lawyers. What function do these lawyers carry out? Why are they there? What value do they bring? And what tasks do you expect them to perform? I think that's the real question firms want to ask.
Jordan, for our final question, I want to ask you to look into the future and predict, will we ever go back to a seller's market in law, or will it be buyers forever?
Well, forever is a long time, it's beyond my forecasting scope. But I'll say this: when I talk to clients, and this is like corporate clients or consumer small businesses who have had a chance to sample the market as it now has evolved, and who have access to these options and these choices, and who have this sense of, oh my gosh, I have influence. I can push back. Clients push back on law firms, and law firms give way. Right? There's a classic case of a GC who began pushing back on law firm rate increases every year, and said to law firms, I will pay your rate increase if you can explain to me how you are increasing the value and impact of what you do. And every single one of them just said, forget it, we'll drop the rate increase. Right? And the more that happens, the more that clients say, you know what? We don't have to go back to the way things were. I don't want to. I have options, I have choices, I have influence. I'm not giving that up. And I don't see those options going away. I don't see any way the genie gets back in the bottle. I've been saying for a while, unauthorized practice of law has a very short lifespan left in practical, implementable terms. Forever, I don't know, but for the foreseeable future, yeah, I think it's going to be a buyer's market. All that having been said, the pendulum always swings back, and these things always rebalance. Lawyers are going to figure this out. Law firms are going to figure this out. We will rebalance. We will reassert ourselves and find other ways to deliver value. New types of scarcity will emerge that only lawyers can provide. And then, yeah, it'll probably swing back a bit more towards the sellers, but at least the pendulum will be swinging, right? For years, for decades, it's been stuck up in one end. Now it's going back and forth, and that's the way it should be. That's the way markets ought to work. And I think we should welcome that. We should welcome it as lawyers, and I think we should welcome it as people who have fundamentally our clients' best interest in mind.
Well, that's a super happy note to end this podcast on, Jordan. We sure want to thank you for being our guest today. I certainly urge people to take a look at your book, which is wonderful. And we really enjoyed your insights and wisdom about the state of the market today, which has certainly shifted. And that pendulum is swinging. And for a lot of lawyers, it's the wrong way. But you've given us a lot of illumination. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sharon and Jim, both.
That does it for this edition of the Digital Edge Lawyers and Technology. And remember, you can subscribe to all the editions of this podcast at LegalTalkNetwork.com or on iTunes. And if you enjoyed our podcast, please rate us on iTunes.
Thanks for joining us. Goodbye, Miss Sharon.
Happy trails, cowboy.
Thanks for listening to The Digital Edge, produced by the broadcast professionals at Legal Talk Network. Join Sharon Nelson and Jim Calloway for their next podcast covering the latest topic related to lawyers and technology. Subscribe to the RSS feed on LegalTalkNetwork.com or in iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.
I bet you didn't think about running a business when you were in law school, but now that you have your own practice, you're constantly looking for tips on marketing, accounting, practice management, and so much more. I'm Christopher Anderson, and you can get expert business advice on my podcast, The Unbillable Hour, found on LegalTalkNetwork.com, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts.